I'm here to facilitate the part where you get to take part in today's event. So I'm going to start off with a quick question to the Premier. And whilst I'm doing that, perhaps you can put your thinking caps on, because I'm sure you can come up with better questions than I can. And we will have people roaming around with microphones. So we'll just start off with the Premier. Premier, 9 months in since you had that landslide victory, and you've talked a lot about the achievements over that time, but I want you to be honest with us today in terms of identifying that one achievement that you're most proud of, and also can you identify the one of your biggest regrets, failures or missteps? Perhaps it's something like not having the Labor Party check Barry Urban's CV properly before pre-selection, but you know, one misstep and one of your best achievements. I've just got to remind everyone we have to have short, sharp answers.
Okay, as quickly as I can. It is, in a world of unstable, often mad governments, to have a stable, reasonable, sensible, quality government leading Western Australia, I think is great. And we've been very focused, and we mentioned before, the domestic economy is now back on track with growth in employment and significant improvement in the employment situation, which I think is terrific. And we've helped with that with some of our jobs initiatives, for instance, building the Stadium Bridge here in Western Australia. Secondly, lowlights. When Treasury walked in and said there's been a $5 billion cut in our revenue about 2 months after we formed government, that was a lowlight. And that sort of knocks you around a little bit. How are you going to cope with that? But we've done our best in difficult circumstances. The only other two lowlights that I'll mention to you all, I opened with the Tourism Minister, I opened a ride at Adventure World the weekend before last, and I made the mistake of going on it. I also, when asked about the alcohol content of beer at the stadium, I made the mistake of commenting on that, which was a major crisis. You can mess with everything else, but once you mess with alcohol content, you're really heading for trouble.
That was a good question that journalist asked about beer, wasn't it?
It was a very good question.
Okay, moving on, we're going to take some questions from the floor now. Just a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. Announce your name and company before asking your question, and please be brief. We don't want to hear statements. We want questions addressed to the Premier and the Ministers. And just a reminder to Ministers, just like ABC 7:30 host Lee Sales, I'll be quick to bring you back to topic if you roam off and waffle on. Okay, we've got one just down the front here. Sir, you're up.
Premier, Treasurer and Ministers, thank you for your time and your speech. The economy is improving. We've had 2 sets of data from the national accounts that are positive, and the home market as well is showing price recovery. My question is, what are the key risks looking forward that could throw that off track, and what are the potential missteps from the government or the corporate sector that could throw that in jeopardy?
Clearly, Western Australia being a very trade-exposed economy, anything that can impact on our trading partners, that therefore impact on what they do with our businesses and how they may invest or buy product from Western Australia, that is clearly one of the great risks for Western Australia. Whilst it's one of the huge benefits that we have, it is also something that we are vulnerable to. I think now... I'm not expecting any further dramatic decreases in, I think you referred to dwelling investment. In fact, we're expecting that to come back to more normal levels across the forward estimates. I think now most of the risk of the reductions in revenue in the balance sheet have probably now flowed through. Budget time, business investment, we're expected about 90% of the way through that decline from those historic highs. But really, WA is very, very vulnerable to really decisions of other governments and commodity prices or the exchange rate, for example, that we don't really have control of, but have to be able to respond to.
Thanks, Treasurer. Trying to get some of that 10 minutes back there, I think. Back of the room, just to the right there.
Lynn Beasley. Thank you very much, Premier and Ministers, for your inspiring and exciting presentations. I asked this question today as Chair of Study Perth, the organisation to bring more international students to Western Australia, and as Chair of the Board of the Medical Research Foundation of Royal Perth Hospital, so looking forward to working with you as the hub develops at Royal Perth Hospital. I was honoured to join your delegation, Premier, to China recently, and I saw the opportunities there, and I'm sure you did. I wonder if you could share with us your thoughts on how we can further take advantage of our geography to reach out to those nations to the north of us for more collaboration and more opportunities, more jobs for Western Australia and a better life for us here.
Thanks, Lynn. It always strikes me as strange that Western Australia has the vast bulk of the trade with China in particular, but also Japan. And yet Chinese tourists in overwhelming numbers go to Sydney, Melbourne, Queensland, and Chinese students in overwhelming numbers go to the eastern states. Well, it's occurred to me that leveraging that incredibly strong trading and governmental and cultural relationship at a governmental level into greater numbers of tourists and students would be something we should do to broaden and diversify the economy. As you know, Len, we started that process recently with that enormous delegation we took to China to open the gates and open the doors to those sorts of opportunities. I expect ministers will go up there regularly and pursue these opportunities. We're investing more, as you know, in Study Perth and to seek students. And we're also investing more in tourism marketing, in particular, an online presence to a greater degree in China. Chinese tourists and students, I mean, you know, television is now out. Everyone's seriously on their smartphone. And that's where they get all the information. You have to be in that smartphone environment. So we've got strategies to get our product, bear in mind it's expensive, our product up on people's smartphone and devices as much as we can to ensure that they look at Western Australia.
Thanks, Treasurer. We're going to take another one from the back of the room, just up the back. I think it's the far table. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jess. Peter Kennedy from Business News, and my question's for the Premier. Premier, just noting the greater importance being attached to KPIs with regard to performance-based pay for senior public servants, presumably you endorse the need for governments to get fearless and frank advice from the bureaucracy. What will be the impact on a bureaucrat's KPIs if he or she gives fearless and frank advice that ministers or their advisors don't want to hear?
Good question there from the former ABC political editor.
To the Premier in particular.
Is that the time? Look, I think sensible ministers welcome honest and frank advice from the heads of their department, and often you need to take it because they often have wisdom that you need to listen to. So I would not think there would be any consequences for people providing frank and fearless advice except to say that they're doing their job.
Got another question heading over to the front here. It's a familiar face.
Emma Gibbons from CGM Communications. Kind of an old topic, but about GST distribution. What are your predictions for the state in the future of WA if we continue with the current GST distribution?
Probably Ben. I think the Treasurer can take this one.
Emma, well, we are, and the budget won't have any assumptions around GST other than the existing process of equalisation as we know it. I'm not expecting any dramatic change for a budget. I'm hoping for it. But ultimately, what you'll see is, and I think perhaps the Commonwealth Government might be looking at the fact that across the forward estimates, our GST relativity does come back to high 60s, 0.67 from memory, to get us back into much more. That's really driving a lot of the return to surplus as we've combined with limited expense growth. But I think the consequences will be probably more political than fiscal, because fiscal, I'm not going to assume anything in the budget, but political, I think the Prime Minister and the Federal Treasurer have put a lot of rhetoric and store in the Productivity Commission review. They will finalise that and provide that to Scott Morrison January, February. I think they're spending a lot of their time now trying to work out how you transition, and I think that would have to be carried by the Commonwealth Government. If they don't, then I think there might be some very interesting federal election results in the not-too-distant future.
Thanks, Treasurer. We've got another one at the back of the room. Out that way. Sorry, we're heading to the right, are we? Back corner. There you go.
Good afternoon. Doug Mackay from Hudson Executive Recruitment. Fantastic news in terms of the growth in the state. There's no denying a lot of talent has left Western Australia. Just like to echo the comments around education, attracting students, investment. What sort of strategies and policy is the government looking at to retain the talent we have in Western Australia and attract people from other states and other parts of the world to work in this fair state? Thank you.
Well, people generally move between locations for a couple of reasons. One is the strength of the economy and the jobs that are on offer. So obviously all of our presentations were devoted to talking about strengthening the economy but diversifying the economy, so we do attract a wider range of people, and I think Alana in particular and Roger talked about the scientific endeavours and the support for those that no doubt will attract people. The second reason people move often is lifestyle, and Western Australia has over a long period of time been improving wide aspects of the lifestyle and the opportunities for good education, put your kids into a good school, a good university, the opportunity of decent healthcare. If you've got ageing parents, they can live here and there's great opportunities there. I think we are actually doing things right. The high point of growth in population was back in the late 2010s and the early, maybe 2011-12, where we had 3% growth per year. It's now down to about 1%, but that is a reflection of the construction phase coming out of the mining sector. If we can succeed in continuing the traditional path of the West Australian economy and diversifying it and leveraging all of the important lifestyle improvements we've made, and also the fact that our housing is now far more affordable, we'll see a lot more people come to live in WA.
Jess, can I just make a comment in addition to that? One of the direct impacts of extra spending in relation to medical research is that you attract the very best of clinicians and medical researchers that are available. What happens in our health system in Western Australia is often people come through the system, learn their craft, and then go to other parts of the world in order to conduct the research. And then we see them again at the end of their careers when they realise that Western Australia is such a great place to live. So a very deliberate and important part of the Health Research and Innovation Fund is to keep people but also attract people. We know that senior researchers attract other researchers because they want to work together to practice at the very frontier of their craft. And a direct result of higher spending on medical research is that you have a better workforce.
I think we've got us back on time schedule now. So just to wrap up, I'd like to call Jeff Connolly up to the stage, Chairman and Chief Executive of Siemens, to propose a vote of thanks.